Hi, I'm Stanley Nelson of Firelight Films and Firelight Media, and it's my pleasure to host this discussion with Laura Limbaugh and talking about Through the Night. Very excited to do that. Through the Night is one of my favorite films of the past, I don't know, 10 years. I just love this film. It's such a sensitive portrait of people that sometimes we don't think enough about. And I just think it's a really beautiful and accomplished film. And I'm so happy to talk to Loida about it. Let me introduce Loida Limbaugh, who I've been working with for over 10 years now at Firelight, and who runs the documentary lab and so many other things at Firelight. And Loida, say hi. And what is your official title with Firelight?
It's changed a lot. I'm coming up on it'll be 12 years this March, Stanley.
Wow.
We've been through some things. My official title now is Senior Vice President of Programs.
Yeah, and Loida, does so much. I mean, why I asked her official title, because so we wear so many hats at Firelight, and we do so much with so few people, and Loida is a main driving force behind it, and I couldn't believe with all the other things that she does at Firelight that she pulled off making this incredibly beautiful film, and so just another hat that she wears. We're gonna see what do we see first? The trailer.
The trailer.
Yeah, we're gonna see the trailer.
So,
For Through the Night right now, and then we'll be back to discuss it. And I think later on we'll see another scene from Through the Night, but we'll see the trailer from Through the Night first, because it's a real film that feels a certain way, and I think that it would be great if people see how it feels.
Come on, Mama, time to get up. Come on. Morning, baby. All right. Noah, time to get up. I've been doing this for 22 years. I have all different types of families in my daycare. I have some that comes in at 6 o'clock in the morning that works to 8:30 at night. I have some that comes from 3:30 to 12:30 at night. I have some that comes in overnight. I see a lot of parents come in and break down. They don't want to do this, but they need to work and take care of their family.
See you later. All right, baby, have a good day. Be careful.
This is the way the world is set up at this point.
I never really thought of overnight childcare till I had to use it.
I've been working 7 days, almost 2 months. If I'm not working one job, I'm working another job. Hi, Mommy.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Love you guys very much.
It's not just a job.
Turn your sheet over.
This is really our life. My children, ever since they was the age of 2 years old, they had to share me with other children. I remember my children saying, Mommy, why do they have to come first?
Mommy!
As parents, you make sacrifices. It's not their fault. So I just do what I can. It's not easy, but eventually I'll sleep.
Do we love each other?
Yeah.
I didn't hear you.
Yeah.
Do we love each other?
It's okay.
And you have to be careful. If you continue to have anomalies, you need surgery.
Uh-oh. This work is hard. I don't want to stop doing what I'm doing because I feel like if I lay down, I'm so tired I might not get back up.
I was tearing up again. It's just such a beautiful film. Through the Night is a profile kind of a cinema verite profile of a daycare center, 24-hour daycare center, in New York, kind of in New Rochelle, but on the border of the Bronx. Is that correct? And one of the reasons why it's needed is because women, especially women of color, have to work, or parents have to work the night shift or whatever shifts they have to work, and they need daycare, and there's nothing else for them. What drew you to the story at first, Elijah?
Sure. So, I learned about the daycare through an article that I read. And and it was the article was basically focused on just what you mentioned right now, the way that people are working in the United States, and, sort of looking at what that means for parents, that are working sometimes multiple jobs to make ends meet, or working a night shift. And they profiled the daycare in the film, these tots, in this article. And I remember reading, the stories that they mentioned in the article, and it really made me think about my mother, because my mother worked the night shifts when she was raising us. She worked a low-wage job. She raised 4 kids in New York City, making minimum wage, and I'm the oldest of 4. So in many ways, I became her right hand when I, at a really young age. So I have a lot of memories of seeing her struggle to take care of us and to provide for us, and also having to like help her with that, So, and it was something that I hadn't given a lot of thought to until I read the article. These are like childhood memories that I'd kind of put aside. And then it just made me really sit with like what my mother's experience must have been like, and wanting to kind of understand like how she did it, how she was able to do everything that she did for us, given the conditions and what she was up against, So it brought me to like a really personal, place of memory and reflection. And then, I started thinking about all the women I know in my community and my friend circle who are single mothers, and knowing what they're going through. And then just becoming really sort of angry in some ways about the fact that this reality hasn't changed. This was like my mother's reality 30 something years ago. I'm about to be 42 next week. And here we are 30 something years later, and not much has changed, right? That we're still asking, or in some ways demanding, that Black and Latina, working class women make these really impossible choices every day, And so, and then, I'm a filmmaker. So I was like, this is a story that deserves to be told.
Talk a little bit about the family in the film, because they're really stars, in the film. So again, this is a 24-hour daycare center, and it's run kind of by a family. And it's open 24 hours. You can come and drop your kid off at any time and pick them up at any time, 24 hours. Talk a little bit about the family that runs it, because they really take a real star turn.
Yeah, so the daycare is run by Nuno and Patrick, and they founded it like 2 decades ago, a little over 2 decades ago. And they run it out of the first floor of their home. And their daughters, have worked in the daycare, and family members, and then children who have gone through the daycare, who have grown up, have come back from college and worked in the daycare. And so it really is a family, but I think family in like the most expansive, sort of definition of the word. And, I often refer to them as, they're just like amazing. Like, I have kids. My kids have been in daycare, and my kids' daycares have been fabulous, and I'm really grateful to have found, great people to leave my children with. But I've never experienced a place with that many children be as sort of calm and, peaceful as this place is, which is really like a testament to how special Nuno and Patrick are. You know, and it's funny because I a few times over the years, I tried to get them to kind of like explain how they do it, you know, like how, you know, it's like they'll get, I don't know, 8, 12, 3-year-olds to like take a nap when it's nap time. You know, I can't get my two to do a lot of things sometimes, right, Naila? And Nuno would always sort of shrug and say, you know, it's really not that hard when you respect children and you treat them, you know, as people, and you kind of get to know them as individuals. You know, she would say like, you know, when such and such child walks in the morning, I can tell what kind of morning they had by how they walk in, you know, or just by how they're moving or how they put their book back down. And so I already know how to, you know, kind of acclimate them and respond. And it's like this uncanny ability. Layla, can you please give me a little bit of space for a little bit of time? Thank you. I will come right to you when I'm done. You know, it's like eyes here, but eyes on the side of their heads, eyes on the back of their heads, like see everything and kind of manage everything. It's like a really well choreographed ballet that they have going on in there. And that sounds like really pretty and frilly, but I'm not exaggerating. The whole crew that worked on the film loved going to shoot, you know, and everyone sort of said that they would leave feeling a lot of love and warmth, you know, when they left the space. So they really are, you know, experts. They're masters at rearing children, you know, which I think is part of what we do want to lift up, you know, is that sometimes folks like childcare providers and other caregivers, you know, get treated as like glorified babysitters or something, you know, and it's not seen as skilled, valuable labor that really require, you know, there's a craft, right? Like it's expertise that is so valuable. You're rearing children, raising children, but it's so often like dismissed and made to be, you know, smaller than it is, you know. You know, and they've all been working throughout the pandemic, so they haven't closed their daycare precisely because they are now taking care of the children of the people that we call essential workers. You know, so Marisol, who you know we meet in the trailer, is still working multiple jobs, is working for a supermarket supplier. So she's been working 6-7 days a week throughout the pandemic to make sure that we have our toilet paper. You know, and Shanona is a pediatric ER nurse, so she's working, you know, and then Nuno and Patrick caring for their children and other children. Daycare is open. Yeah, so these really are, you know, it's like it's a portrait of the lives of essential workers, you know.
Yeah. I think that this one of the things that comes through so strongly is the love that they feel, and you know, and you know, I also want to talk to you about that whole idea of essential workers, you know, and how, you know, how do you think the reception of your film might have changed a little bit because of COVID? You know, I want to talk later on about the release of a film in COVID, because that's a whole other problem.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I don't think I had ever. I never used the term. I'm not sure I had ever heard the term essential workers before COVID, and now, you know, we all have an understanding, at least a kind of an understanding of you know, people that are essential that we might have taken for granted. So how do you think your film has been thought about, maybe in a little bit of a different way, because we're thinking now about so many people that you profile, and even the whole daycare center in a different way?
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's been interesting, right? Because every quarter of 2020 has felt like, an entire decade, and things have changed so dramatically, right? Like quarter to quarter. And I remember, we were supposed to have premiered at Tribeca, and obviously, that got, canceled. And in New York, we were the epicenter, of COVID, and mired in that, and like festivals not understanding what they were going to do, and sales agents, having one set of concerns, and press having a different set of concerns, and nobody really having any like terms for how they were going to engage with each other around films that were being released, And I think for the first couple of months, when we had conversations with people about the film, that they kind of were dismissive, and I think in the same way that people are dismissive precisely of these folks, right? Like, in general, our society does not care about the supermarket clerk, right? Even though now we understand that they really are essential people, right? And they always have been, right? It just took a pandemic for us to kind of wake up. So I think in some ways people are like, oh, this is a daycare, and this woman works 3 jobs, and the film, I think, was treated a little bit in the same way that the people that the film is about get treated. But as time has gone on, and I think as more people have seen it, and this sort of the reality of all these systems collapsing and what we're living through, it's the kind of the reception, I do think, has changed. And I feel like people are, sort of, it's gained a momentum of its own as people's analysis and understanding has been shifting with COVID as well, and I did a conversation the other day where there were, it was a panel of folks that do women's rights work and gender justice work, and it was like Human Rights Watch type of people, and Amnesty International, and all of these folks, and they were all white women, some of them based internationally. And one of them, I have to really like give it to her. She her comments, I felt like she was really really precise in how she talked about the US as it pertains to the treatment of women and women of color. And, she was like, I work on a 12-person team on women's rights issues that is based all over the world. And I myself had never heard about 24-hour daycare. And that's precisely like the, the experience, right? Is that like in feminist spaces that tend to be dominated by white women's experiences, these realities get overlooked. And if people are talking about labor and the economy, the image of that in the United States is still very much, a white man working at like some sort of like automobile, or, like you hear about the blue collar jobs lost in Michigan, or you hear about coal miners in West Virginia, but again, you don't hear about the folks that works at your local CVS or at Target. And the reality is that, increasingly, this is the majority of our labor force, right? So there's this way in which the experiences of Black and Latina women, because sometimes we say women of color, but, this is like specific, because it's also what I know. I wanted to create a film about my community, and what I know, that, just kind of gets lost and overlooked by everyone, even our movements sometimes,
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the things that your film does is, it explains so much without explaining it, and that, the people who run the daycare center love the kids. The mothers, all love the kids, you have no doubt about that. You might go in thinking, well, why would somebody put their kid, in a 24-hour daycare center? But that's what they have to do, and they do it out of love. for their kids, because they have to earn a living to try to give their kids a life. And you know, I know, you know, that one of the things that you're probably confronted with, I don't know if you've thought about this a lot, but you know, is that people talk about the issues in your film, right? It comes up with a lot of issues, but I don't think the issues are ever really talked about in the film. You know, it's not like an issue film. It's not like, you know, we ever like, oh, well, we did, you know, it's just their lives are laid out there. And you as a viewer have to think about and think about the issues yourself. And you know, I love that about your film. Is that something that you set out to do?
Yeah, thank you for that, Stanley. Yeah, I definitely didn't want to make a film that explained anything, because part of it, you know, again, thinking about my mother, part of it for me was that I wanted to make the film for my mother. I made it for Nuno. I made it for Marisol, for Shanona, for my neighbors, you know, for my own children's childcare providers, to see themselves, you know, to just see themselves somewhere, and to sort of counter the ways that, you know, sometimes we are made to feel insignificant, you know. And so because I was really thinking about the film being for the very people that it's about in many ways, I knew I didn't have to explain anything. You know, it was, you know, the goal was for it to just kind of serve as a mirror, you know, just as an invitation or an opportunity to kind of stop and see yourself and reflect a little bit, you know, particularly because you don't have that kind of time, you know, ever to just pause and take stock of yourself, and what you're doing. And I think that's critical for us to be able to do that on our own terms, because, you know, so much of what we see of ourselves is through the gaze of, you know, the media and popular culture in this country that is extremely racist and perverse and sick and cruel. And so we get these extremes of our lives, you know, and it's like, yes, it's important what, you know, everyone thinks about Black folks, but it's most important what we think of ourselves, you know, and that to me is like of the utmost importance, you know. And for that, it was like I was trying to achieve an emotional, you know, portrait, not an explanatory portrait, you know what I mean? Because it's for the people that are living this day in and day out. So they know, you know, they know that their employer, you know, is going to keep them at 24 hours so that they don't ever get to 30 hours or 32, so they never get health insurance. They know about how the childcare subsidies work. They know about all those things, you know. And that's not, you know, that's not what they need. I think in many ways what we need is images of our everyday lives, living, giving love, caregiving, you know, raising our children, seeing our children laugh. You know, there was one point while we were making the film that, you know, you had the news about the children being separated at the border, and, you know, you had the consistent stream of police killings of really young Black folks. And at one point I was like, I need to see Black and brown babies being loved on somewhere. You know, I can't just keep seeing all the things that are killing us, because I'm raising 2 kids. Like, you know, I need this, you know?
Yeah, that's why the little scene that we saw a piece of where they turn on the disco light and start kind of dancing is just so beautiful. You know, it's not like you ever think, well, you know, why are we seeing this? It's just, you know, beautiful. Let's watch the clip that we want to watch of the film, and then we'll have some more conversation, and then hopefully we have some audience questions too. So let's watch the clip now.
He needs to get some rest, though. Your mom gotta get some rest because your mom be working at nighttime and then she get off of work at the morning.
First, she drops me off at school. Then she takes Nova to school. Then she goes back. Sometimes she doesn't need to sleep. She doesn't need to rest if she don't feel like it.
3, 2.
She needs some rest. She's tired. She needs to get some big rest. Nighttime, go to sleep, get some big rest.
All right, guys.
Just a quick question. How's everybody doing, you know, in the film, the families, the other families during COVID? Are they all well and everybody's okay?
Yeah, they're all okay. They're all okay. You know, holding up like everybody else.
Right. What's going on? It seems like, you know, a nightmare. Talk about, had you finished shooting when COVID struck? Were you in editing and you had finished shooting?
Yeah, so when we went into, when New York City shut down, that week was supposed to be our online. And Malika Zuhali Waral, who's the editor, and I went into Final Frame, downtown, you know, New York. And we had one day of the online that Monday, and then Tuesday we couldn't go back.
Wow.
So that's, yeah. That's where we were on the COVID timeline.
So you're online long distance, the crazy long distance online, or did you wait? Or?
Yeah, no, we did like a temporary, you know, mix. We used some of our days to do a temp mix so that we could proceed with festivals, you know, the ones that did move online. And then in October, when things in New York, you know, were kind of a little more open, we went, you know, with a lot of protocols in place, obviously, we went back for 2 days and, you know, kind of did the final in person so we could, you know, really kind of see everything and hear it. But which was also my first time seeing the film on the screen, like it was October, you know, so it got released into the world. I'd never seen it on a big screen. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks beautiful. You know, I saw it a couple of times, you know, without the color correct, and you know, it's always amazing, you know, once you see the color correct, and it looks great. How do you feel about, you know, it being released during COVID, and you know, you've gotten a lot of acclaim, you know, great reviews and stuff. But it must be a strange feeling, you know, to release a film during COVID.
It is. I think it at times it's felt very like alienating, you know, because this thing, you know, I worked on it for 4 years, and then like I haven't seen Nunu and Patrick, like I haven't watched it with them. I haven't been able to hug them, you know. I haven't watched it with the whole crew that worked on it, you know, and it's a very strange, and then, you know, it's like playing in festivals and now it's playing in virtual cinemas, but you don't have that experience of sitting in a room and like taking in how people are responding to it, you know, where people get quiet, where they laugh, where they cry, having that in-person exchange. I was really looking forward to being able to screen it, you know, in communities with, you know, Black and Latina mothers and, you know, and caregivers. Like you know, the community piece was huge. And that hasn't happened in that way. But at the same time, I think, you know, what we did pretty early on, because having conversations with everyone in the film, was realizing that, you know, we have this film that speaks so directly to so many things that are happening right now, that we had to, you know, kind of not be hung up on whatever is lost and pivot to what is still possible, and how the film can serve the protagonists themselves, and the issues and the communities themselves, which, right now need so much more than what we've given them. We've given them kind of empty applause and stuff, and these really kind of symbolic gestures of like, oh, you're essential workers, yay, and that's it. So we've been, I feel really good about us being able to kind of focus on like what's important and not get kind of caught up in what got missed or lost, and really trying to use the film to care. Our campaign is care for caregivers, really trying to use it as a tool, right, to improve the material conditions of the folks directly in the film and other communities like it. Yeah.
These kind of films, cinema verite films, and it's very quiet film. They're so they can fool you so much because they seem simple in a way, and it's so complicated, there's so much kind of thought that goes on. When did you kind of like think, okay, so you talked about how you found the story, and then did it immediately hit you, okay, I just want to do a portrait of this place? Did you think that you wanted to do a narrator talking about the issues, or when did you kind of hit upon this form for the film?
Yeah, I went into it wanting to make a verite film, and my initial idea actually was to just film for 1 week. I wanted to film 7 days between Christmas and New Year's, like Christmas Eve to New Year's Day, because I just figured that, the holidays for folks that are working during the holidays and they have children would be this moment, right? This kind of capsule that could illuminate so much of the of everything, right? How everything intersects. And then because of everyone's different schedules, that didn't work out. And I kind of still kept the idea for like 2 years, like, two holiday seasons. I was still trying to chase that, partially for the reason I said, story-wise, but also because I was trying to figure out how to constrain production, so that I could manage it, because I work at Firelight and I have 2 kids. And so I was, I knew, I was very aware that I had to create some sort of structure for myself, that wouldn't allow me to kind of give into the temptation that I see sometimes folks have when they're doing verite films, is to just shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot, because I know I didn't have that luxury, that time, and so when that didn't work out, I kind of pivoted and thought, okay, well, I still want to do verite. And again, because I was making it for the folks in the film and these communities, I was thinking about, making something that was like slow, but not just slow. I think patient maybe is the word. I was trying to do something that was patient, where we could sit with a child tying their shoelaces or learning how to tie their shoelaces, and we could sit with Nunu cleaning a counter, and we could sit with all these really small, right? Really small everyday acts of living. Again, back to my point, I want to see us living. And that's not to say that I don't think it's important for us to have films about, the struggle, quote unquote, or, the problems that we face. This film is about the problems that we face, but what you see us do is live. We're not being hurt, we're not being harmed, we're not being killed. Although you could say we are being harmed by working, around the clock. But, the everyday acts of living, that those things matter, and that that it's important for us to see that, and that is actually what care looks like. It is, Nunu doing a child's hair or wrapping it at night so that in the morning, it still looks really nice and neat and she can like head out, that care and love is those really small everyday acts and gestures. And I was trying to make that visible and legible and to say to us that this matters and that we do this every day, day in and day out, generation after generation, despite whatever madness is happening, in the systems in our country, despite whatever they're doing to try to kill us, in any given decade, we still do this. And that this is really important and this matters. And it's not insignificant women's work like we've been told that it is. It's actually the things that have kept us alive, especially in light of everything that we're up against, and so that's where it was like, and I would say the one, or the kind of the big pivot was that Malika and we agreed, right, on that like desire to take the everyday and sort of showcase it and say, this is important. And it's important to be patient and watch this unfold and to be curious about this. But we had some ideas like of wanting to really stylize things. And because, for me, initially, I thought that the way to make something that's been treated insignificant be significant was to dress it up somehow. And what happens was that as we shot, and a lot of the film was shot by Naiti Gamas, who's a brilliant cinematographer. And I feel like the footage has this sort of really airy quality to it. That's all her. That's all her eye. We would get back into the edit with her footage, and we would be trying some things, and it always felt like we were doing too much. We were putting too much. It's like if you have a really delicate flower and you dump a bunch of like, fertilizer or products on it or something, and you end up sort of killing it, and so
just give me an idea of like kind of like what would you do? I mean, you'd add music or
yes. Sometimes it was music, or it was trying to, for example, like I was trying to have some really stylized. So there's one scene in the film, the scene where we learn about Nunu's health problem, which we did so much to that scene, Stanley. Like we threw everything at it. We had echoes and superimposition and effects layered on an image, and ultimately all the scenes that we tried to do really like lots of stylization to, we ended up having to strip, and kind of pull back from, because the footage really, in some ways, I feel like the footage knew what it wanted to be, and we just had to listen to it, and so there was a lot of us trying things and then having to pull back from it.
Yeah, I think that we I want to take some questions if we have them. But one thing I just wanted to talk a quick second about is the editing process, because cinema verite films are just kind of so hard to edit. It's not like there's a story there. You have to kind of come to a story, and you didn't go into the edit room on March 1st and come out of it on August 1st, so tell me, how you edited it and just the process.
Yeah, so we had a pretty, I think, unique approach to the edit, which was that, I didn't have all the money to open an edit, and hire Malika for, 6 months or, whatever. And so we edited as we went along, but literally as we went along. So I brought footage to Malika from the very first day of shooting. And the process that we had was, I would sort of take notes while we were on the shoot and say to Malika, here's the footage, this is what I recall, or this is what I jotted down as moments that I think we can build a scene around, that because it, you know, it speaks to this theme that I'm interested in exploring, or it speaks to that, or, you know. And so we did that along the way. We didn't shoot a ton. I think we shot a total of like 22 days over the course of several years. And so by the time that I had raised, you know, the full budget, which was really when we got ITVS open call funding, that we were like, okay, now we can really like, you know, this thing is going to get made, right? We had a bunch of scenes that we'd been, you know, shooting and editing little by little as we got other smaller grants. By the time that we opened the edit sort of proper, and Malika was able to set aside, you know, a number of consecutive weeks to work on it, we had enough scenes. We started with an assembly when we opened our edit, and the assembly was maybe like 90 minutes long or something, you know? And that was a process that really worked for both Malika and I, because, you know, I was doing other things and Malika was doing other things, right? She's a director herself. She has other projects that she's working on. I was working at Firelight. She's a mother, I'm a mother. It was a kind of an approach that was iterative enough that it made it possible for us to actually see this film through, you know? And I also think there was something that was really great, which Malika has pointed out, that by the time that we opened the edit, there were scenes that we had cut, you know, from year one of shooting, that we could kind of go back and revisit. And so we had like the benefit of some space and distance, which always is great for perspective, you know, on the thing. Yeah. So that's how we did our edit.
You got it done, yeah.
Got it done.
So we have, I think, one question for you, which is, have you reached out to President-elect Biden and any other members of government so they can see the film?
So I have not done that personally, but there are, I believe, a number of organizations that we are partnering with that are working on policy around childcare and a living wage and all the issues, right, that intersect in the film, that I think are trying to get to Vice President-elect Kamala Harris around this. And then we are going to be doing some screenings for, I think we have a screening coming up with legislators from New York. And I forget who it is, but it's an elected official that works with the Black and Latina Women's Caucus in New York State. So that is starting to happen, you know, but again, it's like it's kind of all been building sort of slowly, you know. Everybody had to realize that they need to care, whether they have a 5-year-old or not, you know?
Oh, we have another question. I'm curious how much actual interviewing you did, and what were the considerations regarding how much or how little to use interviews?
Yeah, that's a great question. We went back and forth on that quite a bit. We were shooting for, I don't know, a little over a year before we did any interviews, because again, we were just sort of shooting verite, and I really wanted the film to be all verite. So my vision would not, you know, my initial vision didn't include any voiceover. And, you know, then I realized somewhere along the way that that I wanted to hear the folks in the film reflect in their own words about their lives. You know, like I wanted a little bit of like their own analysis, you know, like for me, it was important to have Shanona say, I feel guilty because, you know, even when I'm with my kids, I'm so tired that I don't feel like I'm giving them the best of myself, you know? And so that's where we decided to do interviews. So we did one master interview with everyone, all the main characters in the film. And then with Nunu, we did some more informal kind of interviewing work. So we'd be shooting verite, but kind of off the cuff, ask her, a question or two. If there was something happening that I felt like needed some sort of, explanation, I would just get it from her, as she was in the kitchen or as she was doing whatever she might have been doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's very little in the film that feels like kind of sit down interviews, and there's no experts or anything like that.
No.
It's just people who are involved in the daycare center, one way or the other. A couple more questions. One of the main ones: where else are you publicly screening? Where can people see the film?
Yeah, so right now the film is playing in virtual cinemas across the US. So folks can just visit our website and pick a theater and watch from home. And then the film will also be on POV and on PBS in May.
What's the website?
It's throughthenightfilm.com. And, there's a big banner. You kind of can't miss it. And it's playing in cities across the country. And so it's really available across the entire US right now. And we also have it available with Spanish subtitles.
Okay, I'm just going to read the next question, so I'm not filtering it. So I hope it's good. How hard was it to get access to the daycare, especially because it might have involved getting releases from families to have all the children on camera?
Yes. So that's a great question. It was not hard to get access, but when I learned about these tots through the article that I mentioned, I reached out to someone who worked on the article because I knew them and asked, I said, oh, I'm a documentary filmmaker now. I hadn't been in touch with this person for a long time. So I said, oh, this is what I do. And this is where I work. And I mentioned Firelight and everything. And I was like, I think this would be a great film. Would you make an introduction, to these folks? And the person said no. They didn't feel comfortable brokering that introduction. And they sort of implied that they thought that the folks in the daycare had been a little sort of hesitant or weary when they were working on the article. So she didn't think that they would be open to a camera crew, was her kind of rationale. And so I said, okay. And I stepped back from it, from the idea. And then like a few months later, I was still thinking about it. And so I actually went and found a few other daycares that do provide overnight or irregular and non-standard hours, and I spoke to a few other providers, and but I still, sort of kept coming back to the image that I had created in my mind from this article. And so it was 2 years later that I finally reached out to Nunu and Patrick. I cold called them, just kind of looked them up and called them and introduced myself and, said, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is what I'd be interested in speaking with you about. Would you take a meeting with me? And Nunu said, I'll talk to my husband and I'll get back to you. And she called me back a few days later, and I went up and met her and spent a whole afternoon speaking with her. And from that first meeting, she agreed. And then in terms of the children and the families, I have to say, I think I really benefited from a trust that maybe I didn't earn myself, but because Nunu was vouching for me and this idea, I had sort of like an automatic trust because, she's such a central figure in the lives of so many people and in some of the most intimate ways, right? She is caring for their children. In some instances has cared for multiple generations of children in a family. And so because of who she is and her relationships with the parents, like I had the benefit of that, without necessarily having to work for it, which I was aware of, and I was really careful and sensitive to because, obviously these are people's children and that's delicate, you want to do right by people. So that's how the access and the sort of the trust piece evolved.
I have for your information, Nunu is on the call.
Hey, hi Nunu.
Nunu, if you want to start an adult overnight daycare center, I'll come up there and spend the night.
Somebody was like, an adult person that moderated a conversation we were all on recently said, "Nunu, can you adopt me? Like, like it's not even for my kids, it's for me."
And spend the night and be wrapped up in your love, it would be great. So I'm happy to meet you virtually. So I think one last question, it just in here is how did you find your characters? The two mothers in the film, was a conscious choice or more of just a coincidence of finding them? How did you find your characters?
Yeah, so I say that Nunu was the casting agent as well as the protagonist, because when we spoke our first couple of conversations about what the film could be, I told her what I was interested in capturing. And then I asked her, like, you're agreeing to this. What is it that you're interested in saying, through this film? Why are you agreeing? What are you hoping for? And she very early on said to me, I really want the world to see what my mothers go through, because people are really quick to judge them, but they have no idea, so it's really easy to talk and have opinions, and say people should do this or do that. But it's like the saying goes, if you haven't walked a mile in a person's shoes, and and so because that was one of her primary, it wasn't her only goal, but one of her primary goals, she said to me, I think you should talk to these 4 mothers. And she, sort of listed out 4 different folks. And then it just happened that I spoke to Marisol first, and we really connected. And I felt like she was also enthusiastic and really clear about why she wanted to be part of this. And then I spoke to Shanona, and I also felt like there was a good rapport and a good connection. And so then I sort of stopped. I didn't keep, spending time with other folks, because again, I was really aware of, like, many of the initial conversations were happening on the very limited free time that folks had, so I didn't want to just kind of keep digging if I felt like I had connected, with folks that really spoke well to some of my initial ideas, so it was a combination of Nunu kind of picking folks, and then and those folks also wanting to participate.
We've come about to the end of our time. I want to say, if you have not seen Through the Night yet, please, you should see it. It's a film that plays a great trick. It kind of will make you think and make you mad, but it also makes you feel really good. About the world, about the ability to survive, and about the ability to love and be cared for. So I think it's wonderful. Lloyd, if you want to give a last word, any last word that you want to give?
No, I'm just, thank you so much, Stanley, for doing this. I mean, it's like such a, I told you, when we had the rough cut screening, and I knew I had to screen the film in front of you, I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna throw up. I'm just like so nervous.
I hope I was okay.
No, you were great, and it just really means a lot. When I first came to Firelight, I remember really thinking like, Firelight was a place where I could learn, and for me, it's like you've provided an example of someone who's been able to make a living doing what you love, right? Which is in the arts and in film, which is not an easy feat, but doing it with so much integrity, and doing, like always just centering Black people, which is also like, when you're kind of coming up, you're sort of made to believe that that's not really possible or feasible, and I feel like you were and are a living example of that, and so in many ways, like, me being able to make this film, is because of everything that I've learned, and watched you do. So this is I'm serious. I mean, I've been working at Firelight for 12 years, Stanley.
I know. I mean, you've made an incredible an incredibly beautiful film. And you know, it's just a joy to see, and a joy to see all the recognition you're getting. You know, the Times Star and Review, and others. You know, that you know, that people, you know, understand the film and really like it. So it's a great film. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. Loida, thank you so much.
Thank
Much
you.
love, and goodbye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.